We're live on YouTube and live on Zoom.
Welcome everybody who is joining us. We'll begin promptly at 9:30. If you could, please introduce yourselves in the chat. Make sure you send it to all panelists and attendees. Okay, I think we will go ahead and get started. It's 9:30. Welcome everyone to our K-12 Online Teaching Academy. Please introduce yourself in the chat if you want to. If you're still just joining us, I'd like to go ahead and get started. We have a wonderful presenter today with us, and her name is Marissa Thompson, and she will be presenting on writing instruction and support during distance learning. She's a high school teacher as well as coach, a blogger, working at university level as well. She'll explain a little bit more about herself to you when she introduces herself. And I'd like to go over a few announcements first. Oh, first of all, I'm Stephanie Eichley Chang, coming to you from the College of Education. And we have Brian Chungduli with us as well, who will be co-hosting today and helping to facilitate what's going on. For our announcements today, a recording will be available afterwards, which will be sent to you and will also be posted online at the Academy address. Captions are available in the recording, and Brian will drop that link there for us. Your video and audio, they're turned off today, so you can go ahead and use the chat. Marissa will explain to you about how that's going to work today. We're going to be, if you've been with us these last, any of these last webinars, it's going to be a little bit different today, but we're excited about what's going on. So you'll be using the chat to communicate, or you can put some questions in the Q&A and I'll be monitoring that as well. Just to let you know, our time is going to go a little bit longer today, and we're not going to have the debrief session because Marissa's going to be staying with us beyond 10:30. So if you do need to leave at 10:30, you can always go back and access the recording afterwards. And also something we've added to our announcements is we have a Facebook group and or LinkedIn group that you can join to network with other people. So feel free to follow those links there and become a part of that. So I'm now going to turn it over to Marissa. Welcome, Marissa.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. Hi, everyone. I wanted to let you know that I am doing things a little bit differently today. I'm used to presenting in person, of course, as we are all teachers, and that's what we do. But unfortunately, from home, my internet is spotty, and I was not about to waste anyone's time. There's a lot of information, there's a lot of great materials, and I want to make sure that you get all of the information that you need. So I recorded it yesterday for you, and I'm really glad I did because already my internet's been having a little bit of trouble. As you're watching the video, it's still me, still talking. You'll see me kind of in the corner. I am going to be answering your questions on the chat and hopefully get all of your questions answered there. I am extremely reachable. You are welcome to get in touch with me on social media or email or Vox or anything. This is my life passion. So if you have a question, I want to talk to you about it. So I think we're ready to go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marissa Thompson. I'm an English teacher in San Diego, California. I'm an instructional coach for my district. I'm a professional development instructor for the University of San Diego, and I blog and I speak at conferences, and I love sharing ideas. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the methods that I've used that have made writing so much easier for my students, and also so much easier for me as an English teacher. So I'm excited to share these ideas with you today. I've given presentations before at different conferences and things, and district PDs, but this is a newer presentation for me, so it's still a little fresh. I've given it twice in the last couple months, but I hope that you'll find it really useful. And if there's anything that I don't fully explain, or if you'd like the link to something that is not there, please let me know, and I'm happy to explain things further during the Q&A session or even after, and I'm happy to share the items with you. So let's go ahead and get started. I always start a presentation with a question about what it is your ultimate goal is. So it's either about communication, or in this case, it's about students writing. So since we're recording, just in case I have some internet issues here at home, I can't do the back and forth, right? But I want to tell you that for me, my ultimate goal when it comes to student writing is to have the students know that their ideas are worth communicating, and to know that they have the tools at their disposal to be able to communicate those ideas clearly and effectively for their audience. So for me, it's a lot about providing the tools and providing the practice, making sure that they understand how to construct a piece of writing, but also to have that confidence that their ideas are worth it. So we're going to talk about all of those things, including some of the activities that I use and some of the materials I use as well that the students have said have really, really been helpful. First things first, I want to tell you a little bit about me. So like I said, I'm an English teacher. I do a bunch of work for the district. I'm currently working on helping to design or expand our virtual school. And then I do some work for teachers as professional development instructor for the University of San Diego. I've traveled extensively, and I think that's part of the reason why I don't always see things as, well, this is the way it always has been, and so this is the way it should be. Because I've been able to see a lot of different cultures and a lot of different places and a lot of different people and approaches to life in general. So I'm constantly trying things. I'm currently pointsless. I know that that's a phrase that's getting thrown around a lot. So I'll explain a little bit about that, but I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But I'm just constantly trying things. I always want the focus to be on what's best for students. But at the same time, I've started to realize these past few years that once we have what's best for students, it has to also be what's best for teachers. So I'm not done trying until it's also good for the teachers. Okay, so I'm going to talk about both of those things as we go through these different materials today. One of the things I have to admit to you, just in case you're in the same boat as I am, I became a teacher and expected it to be like the movies, and it was not. Or it was, depending on which movies you're watching. And I loved my students, and I loved the content, and I loved so much of it, but I hated teaching. And I'm using my air quotes down here because the teaching experience was very different than what I really wanted it to be. So I decided I was going to quit. After 7 years, I was leaving. I was actually going to go be a corporate trainer, if you want to talk about inspirational positions, right? So I was going to go be a corporate trainer for business. And instead, I started changing some of the things that we were doing. And I realized what I was missing was so many of those life skills, right? That really lead to those conversations and get you connected with the student and their path and what they're trying to do, and really allow you to be more of a mentor or coach instead of somebody who's providing English instruction. And so a couple of years ago, my superintendent shared this at the kickoff, right? At the back to school kickoff. And I loved it. And I show it to my students constantly. And I realized that these most in-demand skills, right? The World Economic Forum says these are the skills that the world of work needs from people. And I asked my students, how many of these are you really practicing and getting just so good at so that you're ready when you enter the world of work? And you could see them go, not many. Yeah. And so I started to play with the idea of mixing the content skills and making sure that I prepare my students to be communicators and to take in information and analyze it, synthesize it, all the Englishy things, but at the same time, in a way that allows them to practice these so important job skills, right? Personal skills that they're going to need. There are 20, 30 skills. I don't care for them. They have removed all of the interpersonal skills, and I think that that's a big mistake. So I stick with these 2020 skills. Still think we're going to be human beings and interacting in 2030, I hope, the way things are going. All right. So one of the things that I started doing, and I realized I needed to do, I started to gradually get rid of tests, get rid of reading quizzes. I got rid of homework. My students still have to read at home sometimes. And of course, this is pre-COVID, right? So they still have to read at home sometimes because the novels that we've selected are longer. I can't read them all in class and still get through everything we need to. But everything else is done in class. And I realized as soon as I did that, I had more time to really work on the skills that I felt they needed and that they needed to practice. I also started practicing a lot of the content skills without literature. And I found that I was able to reach more students that way. And then as soon as they had those skills, we could apply them to the literature. They would transfer to the literature. This is one of those projects. We were practicing research and synthesis and collaboration and theme and symbolism and all of these wonderful English content skills that they need, but at the same time practicing those life skills. This has since turned into a video project, which is fantastic and really takes it to the next level and adds those needed digital technology skills, right? The digital literacy, and then also the figure it out. Like I run into an obstacle with my tech, great, you need to figure out how to go and deal with that. So that's a cool project. I do it every year. I highly recommend it. You can click there for more information and also some materials and some samples. Okay. Another thing that I started doing was I realized I wanted to have students write more and I wanted them to speak more, but my time constraint remained the same, right? So I started doing this choose your own assessment, which totally works and would really work in an online education system or a brick and mortar educational experience. That's a cool organizational thing where the students can choose 2 assessments per unit. They can choose a test, a multiple choice test, and an epiphany presentation, or they can choose an in-class essay and a presentation or any kind of combination. But by the end of the semester, they will have done 2 of each. So they're still getting the test taking, they're still doing in-class on-demand essays, and I'm getting them to do more writing, and I can grade them faster because I'm not collecting 200 of them. And I'm also getting them up and speaking more, which I loved. And it was neat to have a little bit of a variety for everybody. Anyway, if you'd like to talk about more about that, I would love to talk to you about it and provide you with those materials. All right, that's me. That's my journey. All right, so I'm constantly trying things. I'm constantly tweaking things until it's really good for the student and also really good for the teacher. It's gotta be both. In order for this to work and in order for those solutions that are good for students to last, it's gotta work for the teacher too. Okay, so on to the writing. One of my questions is, do you know your writing weakness? Because so often our writing weaknesses will transfer to our students because we may not know how to fix them. Case in point, middle school, high school, college, I got the same 2 things on my papers every single time. I got C/S and I got S/V, okay? And my parents being those parents that are like, hey, you need to go talk to your teacher. You need to figure out what this is. You are old enough to go talk to them. Now's the time, right? Very appreciative. Can I also say that my mom was an English major and an English teacher and could definitely tell me what these things were and how to fix them, but we're going to save that for a different day. So C/S, I was comma splicing. And I tell my students, dude, I would decorate my essays with commas like it was tinsel on a tree. Just like as many commas as, anytime you want to take a breath, we're just going to throw in a comma, right? Comma splicing. everywhere. I would also put a prepositional phrase in between the subject and verb, it turns out, and I would match the verb to the object of the preposition. I know some of you are like, yeah, that happens. I would constantly get these on my papers. I go into my teacher, adore my teacher, Mrs. Porter, sophomore English teacher. And I was like, hi, I have these on my paper, and I don't know what they mean. And she said, oh, this is comma splicing, this is subject-verb agreement. And so, as helpful as that is, I said, okay, well, I don't know how to fix those things. And she's like, oh, I don't know what those things are. She's like, oh, you're splicing your commas and your subject and verb don't agree. You need to stop doing that. I said, right. Okay. And I would get exhausted by the mental, like, I don't know how to fix this. And I worked so hard on my essay, right? And I realized when I'm in college, I take this class finally called How to Teach Grammar. And I'm like, oh, that would have been useful, right? I was making the same mistake with my students. I would say, don't do this, right? Don't use dead words. Don't use vague words. Don't start a sentence with because, even though they absolutely can start a sentence with because. But we say don't, and we don't explain how to fix it, right? I would constantly, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Do this, do this, do this. But I didn't explain how to fix anything. And that was a complaint that my students had about my teaching. They also had about other teachers as well. So I'm assuming that some of us have had this experience, okay? So I started to get frustrated. My students were constantly using the word that and the word is. And it just had this like weakness to it because they were used so often. And so I started telling my students, don't use the word that. Stop using the word that. And they would go, it just sounds really weird. It's not right. And I didn't tell them how to fix it. Finally, we came up with, these are 6 different ways that you are using the words that as a substitute for what it should really be. So we went through that and everything got better, right? Same thing with is. I don't know how to fix it. Okay, here's how you do it. Oh, totally get it. Thank you so much for explaining it. I know it sounds so simple, but at least for me, I wasn't explaining how to fix their writing errors, okay? So I have there for them, as well as for you, are that and is options so that they can go ahead and fix it themselves, because that's part of that confidence building. They have to be able to identify the problem and they have to be able to fix it. I taught them how to use Control F in their paper. Because one time I was like, I just don't know what to do, you guys. You're using that so many times. And so one day we've built trust. We have a culture. We trust each other with our writing and they know that I'm there to help them, right? And so I said, I seriously, I think people have used that dozens of times. No, I'm like, oh, for real. So we do the Control F. I'm like, all right, everybody, I want to know, how many of you have at least 10 that's, right? The hands go up and they're like, oh, how many of you have 20 that's? And the hands go up. How many of you have 30? How many have 40? We got to 57. And by then we're just busting up laughing. Chances are the students really only have a couple different things that they really need to work on, a couple different bad habits that would make a big impact in their writing. For me, it was comma splicing and subject verb every single time. It would have been really helpful to know how to fix just those 2 things, because some of the other stuff I was doing pretty well. All right. We need to provide the practice, okay? Have them do all the practicing that we need them to do, but we also need to give them the tools so that they can work on it independently, all right? The last thing that we really need, though, is that encouragement. When I do writing stations, I'll have students come and sit by me, and I'll provide verbal feedback, and I'll also provide feedback through something called ProKeys, and I'll explain that in a few minutes. And there's this bittersweet moment of a student who, it's not 1 or 2 students, it's several, but a student will come and sit by me and I'll take a look at their writing sample and, are you nervous? And then a little, and don't worry about it. I'm here to help you. Let's just see what you've got going, And I try and make it as comfortable as possible. So they'll sit with me and I'm like, God, you're a good writer. And you'll hear the student say, I am? You haven't heard that before? No. Students shouldn't be getting to 10th grade without hearing that they're a good writer. And all that means is that we're focused so much on what their writing errors are because we want to help them, that we aren't instilling the confidence in their writing. Okay, so that encouragement is really helpful. It's that criticism sandwich, right? Compliment, criticism, compliment. Let them feel comfortable with it. Okay, so that's one thing I want to say. There are a few things that I use when I start explaining why I'm teaching some of these things about writing that I'm teaching. Okay, but I want, again, to instill that confidence and encourage them to write. And I go, look, I'm using The Book Thief as an example. Okay, it's 600 pages. It's this beautiful book, terrible movie, beautiful book. And I go, I know you have so many things that you liked about this book or about the writing. And I know you have so much that you want to say. You and I could sit down, right? This could be you over here. This is me over here. And you're like, oh, let me just tell you all the things that I know about The Book Thief. You are going to be blown away. I'm like, oh, great. I sit here and I can ask you questions and we can bounce back and forth. But it's not that way with writing. All right. So you may have all of these beautiful ideas. I don't need all of your beautiful ideas. If you write all of your beautiful ideas, that's a doctoral thesis. I need you to pick one and focus on that and explain your thinking with such clarity and specificity and organization and depth that when you write it, I don't need to ask you questions. It's going to be so clear, so linear, right? So organized that I'm going to be able to pick up that information, like pluck it out of your paper that came from your brain that has all these beautiful ideas, and it's going to make so much sense to me. Okay, you're not there for me to ask the question. So that's one of those images that I draw on the board and I go, this is what you're trying to do. I'm trying to get from here to here. You're not there when I'm reading. So I need you to be really, really specific. Okay, really, really clear. Along with that confidence, if we can increase the confidence and we can increase how much they care about their writing, or how much they care about the topic they're writing about, we're going to be good to go. And their writing product is going to be so much better, which means our feedback will be so much more useful, right? I tell students, I'm not going to give you points. I don't do points in my classroom. I'm not giving you points for drafts. Okay? I used to give points. I would give points for the skill. And so they would go, oh, then I'm not all that worried about this draft. I'm like, right, but if you write like a D-level draft, I can only help you to get to like a C or a C+. But if you actually try and you're at like a B-, I can help get you to maybe almost even that A. I need you to care. But some of that gets in the way when we start limiting what they can write about or what kind of format they have, okay? So for years, probably 10 years, I haven't given a writing prompt. I haven't given a choice of 4 different prompts. And I have to say, it's actually easier for me to teach than having these different prompts and trying to help groups of students to that prompt. I know it sounds like that wouldn't be true, but it is very much true to me. The other thing that's useful is to offer materials that there's a variety of, right? So when it comes to outlines, I have 4 different materials for outlines. Whatever works well for your brain, use it. It's just going to help you get a writing product that is clear, specific, organized, and has depth of analysis. Okay, so I don't care if you want to use this one that's on a document. I don't care if you want to use this one that's on a spreadsheet. I don't care if you want to use that big whiteboard over there and do it the way we've been doing in class. Whatever works for their brain is what I want them to use. Same thing with brainstorming. I have a presentation of, 5 or 6 different ways to brainstorm prior to outlining. So whatever works for their brain, same thing with their terms. This is a topic sentence, or this is a claim, or this is evidence, or whatever term is going to work for them. I want them to use that because I care about their thinking and I care about it coming out clearly, right? I will say some of the best writing that they do has been for their video projects that I have them do. Beautiful writing. And I wasn't really expecting that, to be honest. Anyway, if you want them to care about their writing, here are some things. Go with a passion that they care about. If there's something that's going on, they can either disagree with it or offer a solution, send it up to the office, send it to the school board, send it to the state officials, whatever. If there's something controversial or taboo, they're super into it. And then in East of Eden, great book, right? In East of Eden, there's this 1.5-page essay that we tear apart for like 2 hours, analyzing the structure and the message. And it's the same one that's in, I think it's NPR, the who are you? What are you about? What will you fight for? What will you fight against? And that generates some beautiful writing too. Really fun stuff. Okay. Like I said, get them confident, encourage them, give them the practice, give them the tools. So I have a bit.ly. I love bit.ly. It's like a URL shortener, okay, and personalized. You can personalize it. I have bit.lys for everything because that way I don't have to go into my drive and find it and whatever else. So for me, it's bit.ly Thompson's Tips Tricks. And they get this. It has all the materials they could possibly need. If you click there, it'll take you to this as well. Here is the hyperdoc. It looks like this. And it's constantly getting updated. You're welcome to add that to your stuff if you want. But it has all the information that the students need. They don't have to come to me. They are independent. They are confident in their ability to use these tools. Use the tools. A bunch of my students that move on to college, they still have these because every once in a while they'll say, hey, what's this thing that you put in there? How does that work? Because I think that'll be really useful. So I'm glad that it lasts, instead of just a 15-minute lesson that I like it. I like that those tools are available to them. So that's all useful for the student, right? And I'll continue talking about things that are useful for the student. But in this moment, I want to talk to you about what's useful for the teacher, okay? We have a lot of students. We have a lot going on. We have a lot of writing that's coming in. And it's like, how in the world are we supposed to provide personalized feedback to this many students, especially when we're at home, right, that they can actually put to use? One of my first years of teaching, this is before I decided I was moving to corporate training. Oh man, it took everything I stayed up late, I got babysitters, the whole thing in order to get their final essays with feedback to them before the end of the year. Pack up, we do the yearbooks, we do the whole thing, I leave, it's summer, right? They're in a pile in the trash can. And it's just like, oh God. What a massive waste of time, right? Or they'll write an essay, they'll read a book, they'll write an essay. It takes me a month to get it back, 3 weeks to get it back. And then we move on and we're supposed to apply that learning to the next essay. So this year I did something different, October, November. I wanted to do this deep dive into foundational writing skills. And this can be used whether it's in class or at home. So I introduced the topics. I provided the samples. I gave them practice, feedback. I'll explain the feedback. I answered their questions. I showed them how. Let's try it again. I didn't grade it. I didn't enter scores for it. Because here's the deal. Students like points, right? But they don't need your points. They need your help, right? If we're trying to make their writing better, points don't do that. Help does. So students don't need your points, they need your help. Instead of giving them points, I was constantly providing feedback as we went. In those 6 weeks, I hit all of these skills and they became masters at them. Masters at grade level at least. Okay? I had a couple kids that didn't show up and I tried, but this was probably the most effective writing instruction I've ever done. Okay, so for 6 weeks, I just hammer it, practice, 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 all in class, all feedback, okay? Either group feedback, individual feedback, whole class feedback, lots of feedback. They ended up writing so many pieces, right? I didn't grade it. I didn't take it home and grade it. Okay. When we moved, I'll explain how I did that, but when we moved to remote learning, distance learning, I wanted to come up with a way that allowed them the same really effective type of instruction and practice. Practice, 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 lots of choice, feedback on a really regular basis that is tailored to them and to their writing, okay? So I made a template every week, like an article of the week, like Kelly Gallagher, right? Huge fan, Kelly Gallagher. I made this template. It had 4 options. 1, I provided a topic. 2, a topic of your choice, anything that you can analyze. Or I was like, look, you probably are paying attention to the news at least a little bit. You can read this article about COVID, or you can answer one of these journal topics and then turn that into a formal paragraph. So I have this template, and it required so little work on my end every week to create the material, because all I needed to find was a topic that was not about COVID, an article that was about COVID, and then provide one of the journals. And the journals were great. I don't know where they came from. They was shared with me from a colleague who got it from somebody else, but that was really easy for me to be able to do. And then I could just concentrate on feedback. So take a look. This is my template. They got to practice reading, annotating, analyzing, writing, and they got feedback every week. But my preparation of the material took no time whatsoever, okay? Because all I had to do was plug in these couple links and then the journal, look. Just plug those in and I was done. I actually created all of my writing assignments so I could concentrate on feedback. I created them and I posted them for all of March, April, May, June in about an hour. That allowed me the time to provide that feedback because I wasn't spending time creating like that, okay? One of the things that came out though during this remote learning experience, so a parent who is also an educator said, I don't understand why we all have all these different documents in our drive of student work. Wouldn't it be more useful to have one slide deck per student? And they could write their paragraph on their first slide, and the teacher could provide feedback. When they go the next week to write another paragraph, that would become the top slide, week 2 paragraph. And then the next week, the week 3 at the top. This would allow the teacher to be able to see the growth, allow the student to be able to see the growth, and allow student, teacher, and family to see the feedback that the teacher has provided. And it's all in one spot. It's like a portfolio all in itself. I love that idea. I'll be using that idea. So what I was doing though, was having the students, this is when they read their article, they would do here, kind of their annotating. And we do left and right annotations, okay? And then down here, they would write a formal paragraph, a color-coded paragraph, as you can see here. If you click that, those are some good paragraph step prompts that allow students who are really struggling to write a purposeful, organized, clear paragraph. That's good stuff right there. All right. I tell students all the time, you have the ideas. You are super smart. I know you understand it. We've talked about it. We've talked about the material. I know you get it. I need you to write now. You have the ideas. You are smart, but you need clarity, you need specificity, you need organization, and you need depth in order for your writing to be successful, or as successful as you want it to be, as successful as I want it to be. So first things first, here are some of the things that I do with clarity that are useful to the student and depending on what it is, useful to me too. One of the most common things that I would write on a paper is, what do you mean? And so a student would come in and go like, I got, what do you mean on here? I go, look, read this sentence. And they read the sentence. I was like, great, here's the problem. I don't get it. I know that you get it, right? You've got all those ideas going. I know that you understand it. I don't understand what you're saying. What do you mean? And they would explain it. I'd be like, yes, write that. Write that. Don't write this. I don't know what this is. Write that. What you just said, write it. Like, but it doesn't sound smart. I hear you. So one of the clips that I end up showing, right? I'm sure some of you have seen this. It's that clip from Friends, the TV show Friends. You've got Chandler and Monica who want to adopt a kid. They need a couple letters of reference. And they've gotten people, and Joey is completely offended that he has not been asked for a letter to submit for the adoption paperwork. And so there's no audio here. I'm just going to paraphrase. But so he starts to write his letter and he's not happy with how it sounds. And so Ross, his friend, teaches him about the thesaurus that's in there, right? He ends up using the thesaurus for every single word in order to make it sound really smart. And so Chandler starts to read it and he's like, I don't understand. He's like, oh, is it too smart for you? And he's like, no, it doesn't make any sense. And he's like, what are you talking about? Of course it makes sense. I used a thesaurus. Okay. And they're like, on every word? He goes, yep. Okay. So he's super, super proud. My students do the same thing, right? They want to sound smart. They want to sound professional. But unfortunately, as they start to adopt words that, first of all, they don't understand either the context of, the history of, or they've chosen a word that is a totally different connotation than what they mean, they don't sound smart at all. So they've taken this really verbose language, this really complex language to explain a really complex idea that they've had, and they lose that clarity. And so when I show them this, they're like, all right, yeah, okay, I get it. Like, just use the words that you know. It will help so much. But I also need them to be very, very specific. Okay, so we talk about specificity. And there are a couple things that we do here that can be done, again, either in class or at home. So it depends on what you call them. You can call them vague words. You can call them dead words. Some of the students know them as dead words. I call them dead words because that's what they kind of grew up with. And there are these groups of words that are very vague, right? And so we start to lose a lot of their meaning, their communication of their idea, because they're using these really vague words. Same thing with like you and I and my. They get really frustrated because they want to say, I think that. I'm like, you've got a couple there. You know, I think that it is very important. I'm like, dude, what is? Why is it important? What are you talking about? I know you think it. It's on your paper. It says your name right there, you know? And so I start to try and teach them ways to get rid of those phrases. And it took me a while for the I think that. I think that it is very important. And then they would explain. I say, okay, what's important? We would flip that sentence. Friendship is very important. Being honest with one another is, you know, vital to creating a relationship that is built on trust, whatever. Same thing for I think that. A lot of students, I don't know what to write. Just start with I think that. And they'll say, you said not to use that. Absolutely, don't use it. Just use it to start. Do I think that? And whatever sentence follows, you cross out I think that, you capitalize that next word. It's going to work every time. And they love that trick. But those little tricks are really useful. As soon as they start getting used to them, then we can do more with our specificity, right? And really practice to get these bad habits out of their writing. One of the things that I hear from teachers is that students just need to write. They just need to write, let them write. They don't need to worry about all the formatting and editing and revising. And I agree, I want students to write. I want them to write a lot, and I want them to write about things that they care about. However, I've figured out in the last couple of years, really recently, that when I let my students just write without a particular goal in mind, they are strengthening some of those bad habits that we later try to get them to go back and edit out. Does that make sense? Right? So they'll write a journal and it'll have all these dead words. Normally in an essay, they would go back and clean it up. I want them to stop using them now. I don't want them to go back and edit them out. I want them to get used to communicating with specificity. So I started having students write a journal, okay? You can write about these topics. I would put a topic on the board or a couple topics, and I go, here's what I want you to do. If you start to write any of these dead words, any of these vague words, I want you to stop in the moment, take your hands off the keys, right? Take your pen off the paper, and I want you to think about what it is that you really mean. And I want you to come up with a specific word instead. Don't tell me people. Tell me teenagers, students, teachers, parents, grandparents, 4-year-olds. Give me, who are you talking about? Okay. Don't give me good. Do you mean positive? Do you mean friendly? Do you mean effective? What do you mean? And so initially they get really frustrated and it's very clunky, right? And it takes a while. And I tell them, like, look, it's not gonna go well in the first few minutes, but you're gonna get into a rhythm because we've done it a couple of years. I promise this works, just trust me. Is that I'm gonna go around and as you're writing, I'm gonna go around and be like, oh, it, you, that, right? Of course, by this time I've established quite a bit of trust, right? And so we do that and they're like, oh, this is frustrating. I'm like, I hear you, but it's gonna get easier, I promise. After about 10 minutes, so much easier. This also gives me the opportunity to say, look, if you're gonna say it is important that, here's how you would fix that sentence. I'm like, oh, that makes sense, right? If you get stuck, you can write, I think that. Then just go back, cross it out, capitalize the next word. Those are the little tips and tricks that come out of this journal practice. It takes 3 journals, and they don't use these words anymore. Okay, so I'll do one on one day, and then the next day, and then the next day. It takes about 20 minutes each time. This habit is gone. But that's what I mean. If we can like have a laser focus to the error that we want them to fix, that bad habit that we want to get out of their system, out of their writing system, we have to let them practice it instead of having them write it and then go back and fix. Let's get it out of their system. So I'm in a meeting, right? I go to the district office and I've decided that they're going to do this process. They're going to do some specificity. We had started it and then there was an impromptu meeting. I added some tech, which means that it's going to be useful when we go to remote learning, right? All right. So the students watch a TED Talk. There were like 3 different options and they were supposed to write a response with specificity. Okay. So in the moment, they're not supposed to use those words. I'm not there to walk around and I can pick out those words from a mile away, right? But can a sub? I don't know. So I made a spreadsheet and I did some techie stuff. I did conditional formatting. So for those of you who are like, I have no idea what you're talking about, write it down. Or I have this as well. You can have it. The student would take whatever they wrote on their document, copy it, paste it into this spreadsheet. If it stays white, they didn't use any dead words. They're good to go. If they put it in there and hit enter and it turns purple, they've used some dead words in there. How easy is that? So some of the students get wise, right? And they're like, we have access to editing because we can put this in here and paste it. So they start turning some of the boxes white. They also forget that I own it and can see the edits and who's doing it. So we had that conversation too. But it's like, this is for you. This is for you to get better. The other thing that's great about it is that as soon as they start to see that their writing can be improved so quickly, by identifying the problem and getting rid of it, it sounds so much more professional. It sounds so much more elevated. It sounds so much more clear. And they're proud of their writing. We get that confidence building, right? That's everything. All right. Usually those kinds of tips and tricks, they're fine with. They're like, yeah, I'll do that, right? However, as soon as I start kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of the systems that they have gotten very accustomed to, things get a little bit more interesting. Okay, so the next thing that we tackle is organization. One of the first things I do during writing instruction is to prove to them that I am there to help them, that I have some things that will help them, and that I'm willing to do that. I'm not here to make fun of your writing. Okay, I want you to be good at it so you can be effective and regardless of whatever path you go to, right? And so I'm like, look, we've just read our first book. Write an introduction. Just write an introduction. Write a bad one. Write a bad introduction. And so they write it. And I'm like, you've got like 5 minutes. Seriously, I know it's going to be bad. Don't worry about it. So they write it. And I go, all right, everybody ready? You have at least your first 3 sentences or something? And they're like, yeah. Okay. I bet that I can tell you what the first thing of your essay is, or your introduction. Either it's a rhetorical question. Either you've asked me to imagine something. You've provided me a definition from the dictionary that I already knew, or you've given me a quote, and your quote is from Shakespeare, Anne Frank, Gandhi, Roosevelt, Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And they all start busting out laughing. I'm like, if you didn't do that, your essay starts like this. In The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak, he tells the story of, and then the character. And you see them all kind of go, whoa, I'm like, you've been taught to do this. No problem. But I want to be able to help you a little bit, okay? So it doesn't take a lot to become a better writer. Sometimes it's just little things that can tweak it. So if this is your sentence to begin your introduction, right now, your author who wrote the thing, right, that you love so much, is in a prepositional phrase. It's like you could get rid of that prepositional phrase and the sentence still would exist and be fine. Okay, but check this out. If you get rid of the by and you get rid of the he, it ends up looking like this. In The Book Thief, Marcus Zusak tells the story of a, like, doesn't that sound better? Oh yeah, that does. It does. But the other thing you can do, you can add in a positive. Okay, so this is what an appositive is, right? And I go into what an appositive is. And I go, no, it's same kind of thing. Okay, small little thing makes a big difference. So you take this descriptor, and then there it is. In The Book Thief, Zusak tells the story of Liesel, a little girl living with foster parents in Nazi Germany. And even then you can add a comma and keep on trucking, right? But it's these little things that allow them to see that I'm there to help. But I haven't gotten into organization all the way, right? So there's always a kid who's like, can't we just do what we've been doing for the last like 4 years? I was like, you could, but you're not going to get any better. Like, but it works. I go, I hear that it works, but your writing's going to grow. And so I, get to this is another one of those images. I get to the whiteboard and I draw really bad stairs. These are pretty stairs. I go, look, here are different steps, okay, that you need to get better at in order for you to be, ready for college or for working, for life in general, right? And I put the little finish line up there. I go, all right, down here at the bottom, this is where you were at kindergarten. I can't teach you everything you need to know about writing in kindergarten. Your brain's not ready for it. But we do actually start then. What do you think this book is about? How does this make you want to treat your friends? All those kinds of little thematic statements when we're reading, right? In 3rd grade, start working on your paragraphs more. You might even get into multiple paragraphs. In 9th grade, I'm going to work with you on getting rid of your prong thesis. We are going to get better. And so I want you to try this way because it's going to help you. It's going to make your writing more effective. There's always 1 or 2 holdouts that it's harder to convince, but for the most part, I get students who are willing to go along with me on it. One of the activities that I do, I love this activity. One of the activities that I've done that's been really successful in convincing kids that the writing process is really important and that their organization is really important is called essay brackets. It's like a tournament, okay? And the students choose from, topic, sentence, thesis, introduction, conclusion, these different components of an essay, and they think to themselves which one's most important. They battle it out with their group. That component becomes the winner. They move on to the other components until finally they reach the point where they have won. This is the ultimate, most important essay component. But what's cool is they've had this discussion, right, about the importance of organization and what each component is there to do. We do it again for the writing process, right? So brainstorming, outlining, revision, getting feedback, all of those kinds of steps in the writing process. And we do that. Super fun, a loud activity. Haven't figured out yet how to do it remotely, but if you could do this at the beginning of the year, if you are lucky enough to get back into the classroom with your students, this is a good one. You'll like it. All right. Like I said, I like to provide those templates. I like to provide those tools, but I'm not going to provide the particular prompt. I hope this makes sense. Instead, I give them a perfect thesis format. I go, look, a thesis is a thesis. If you're going to do a literary analysis essay, whether it's now or in college, this will always work. In title, author uses element to prove full sentence theme. In title, author uses element to prove full sentence theme. Okay, it's persuasive, it's argumentative, it's talking about author's purpose, it's talking about particular choices that the author made, and it's talking about the life lesson the audience is supposed to learn. It's always going to work, okay? Case in point, I made some up. I honestly I don't even know if the themes are dead on, but whatever, okay? In title, author uses element to prove full sentence theme. In title, author uses something to prove full sentence theme. Same thing even if it's not a literary text, maybe it's a visual. In text, visual text, creator uses something to prove full sentence theme. It always works. So I love the perfect thesis, so do they. Always successful with that. You can also do it without the title and just talk and give the answer to the prompt itself. Anyway, it's one of those little tips and tricks that really works. The other thing is this. It took, 11 years for me to get this figured out. And a bunch of students had that beautiful oh, and I'm like, oh, we got it. Okay. I need their body paragraphs to match, right? A little bit. But they also have to be nuanced in a way that they aren't being redundant, right? They have to be differentiated just a little bit so they aren't being redundant. So I tell them, we're going to work on your body paragraph topics, your topic sentences. That's going to pave the way for everything else. And it's going to be really effective in making sure that you're not being redundant and that you have something that you can actually analyze. So I don't want it to be apple, apple, apple. Otherwise, you are going to be redundant, okay? Sometimes you guys will get to the point where you're like, I've come up with my 3 topics, and you're like, yeah, but the first 2 are the same. And then this other one came out of left field. I don't even know what's going on there, right? Apple, apple, pine cone. And the kids, they laugh. And it's funny because even as we start doing practices, we start doing drills with outlining, they're like, is this a pine cone? I'm like, yeah, it's kind of a pine cone, yeah. Whatever works, right? Making it student friendly. I go, what I really need, if we're going to have fruit, I need 3 different kinds of fruit, okay? This one is they're all citrus. How great is that? But they're tied together in that they're fruit, but they're different enough that you can talk about each of them separately. And they're like, okay. So we start to play with that. I'm like, look, I'm going to give you a thesis, and I want you to tell me which of these goes with this thesis, okay? And I call this body paragraph differentiation templates. There are probably a couple other ways that you can create or organize a body paragraph once you have your, that you can organize an essay once you have your thesis, but these really work and are great for students who are struggling, okay? So I go, look, Here's a thesis. School boards must consider all stakeholders' opinions when they're making decisions. Especially right now would be great. Okay, so we have their thesis. Which one of this grouping would work for it? You could do school boards must consider those opinions. Here's 3 different ways they could gather those opinions. Here's 3 different reasons that they should. Here's 3 different groups that would benefit if they did. Here are 3 positive effects of seeking out those opinions. Here are 3 negative effects if you don't. A lot of my students want to do, I want to do 1 positive, 1 negative. I'm like, well, then what's the third? What are you arguing? Right? Neutral? It's not very argumentative. These work. So here comes another one. Halloween was on a Saturday. And so I was like, how great was that? And I'm like, oh my gosh, so great. I'm like, we should move it to the last Saturday of October. Obviously we're not doing, but 3 reasons that would be great. 3 effects. I know reasons and effects sometimes are interchangeable. Again, whatever works for their brain. 3 negative effects of doing that. 3 groups that would be affected by doing that, either in a positive or in a negative way, positive, 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 or negative, negative, negative for the groups. But yeah, I like this exercise. Okay, so if you give them a thesis and you have them figure out which template will you be using, and I say that a lot. It allows them to then brainstorm. They've got like, hey, here's my thesis. We're going to do reason, reason, reason. I'm like, great. They're like, here are 3 reasons. It's like, no, I don't need 3. Like, well, I have 3 body paragraphs. I'm like, no, I need all your reasons. So I need all of your options. That's where the brainstorming really starts to come in. I want all the groups that could be effective. I want all of the reasons. I want all of the ways. And then I don't want you to pick the 3 best. They hear that a lot. The problem becomes that they're picking 2 apples and then there's a pine cone thrown in, right? I need them to make sense together and I need them to be different. I need you to choose the 3 most different. They're all grouped. They're all somehow alike because they're all reasons, or they're all effects, or they're all methods, or they're all groups of people. But they're different enough that you're not going to be redundant and you actually are going to have something to say about each group. Okay, so 3 most different, 3 most different, 3 most different. Brainstorm them all, 3 most different. Okay. Once we figure that out, I start drilling them on essay outlining. This is one of the most effective ways to see growth in a student's writing and to also increase their confidence that they can write about something without it being redundant and feeling like, I never know what to write. Okay. I have 3 double-sided whiteboards that I've made. They're nesting clothing racks and shower board and zip ties, and we made them ourselves. So I stand, when I'm in class, I stand in the center of the room, and then the 3 kind of are situated in such a way that's like spokes, where I can see all the students working everywhere. And then I could go around to each one, I can hear their conversation, I could go around and offer feedback. I don't need to have them write it on paper, turn it in, go through the process of going through it all on my own, getting, providing points. I'm there in the moment. I'm providing feedback in the moment. They're learning and their grade's not going down because they're missing an assignment or because they haven't learned it all the way yet. So I go around and they love this. People have said, actually, that was actually fun. I always like to throw in the actually. It was actually fun. I told my friend about this and she started using it in her math class. So they do math this way too. Anyway, super useful activity. These are some of the brainstorming options that my students have come up with themselves. This student up here, she was like, I'm going to take a whole bunch of whiteboards and I'm going to kind of brainstorm each of the different reasons on a different whiteboard. I'm like, sounds good. This student wanted to do kind of a half of a journal and sketchnoting. Sounds great. This student wanted to just put in those headphones and sketchnote away. Awesome. And then this student, I thought was really interesting. Like, what are you doing? He goes, oh, I'm writing it out. And then as I go back and think about it, I'm putting in comments of my further thinking, that depth of analysis. Well, that's fantastic. So I offer those as options for all my students. As soon as they have their thesis, as soon as they have their body paragraph topics, they need to brainstorm like crazy so that they have something to write about for each of those different body paragraph topics. All right. Whew, we're getting there. Depth. This is another one of those drawings I do, right? Like, you guys don't even understand. I'm cheering you on. Like, I'm reading your essay. I'm so excited. You're doing such a great job. Your introduction, like, yes, kid, you were figuring it. Yes, you were paying attention. This looks beautiful. And they start going through it. And you start reading that first body paragraph, right, teachers? You're reading that first body paragraph. You're like, yes, look at that embedded quote. My goodness, right? And I draw this picture for them, like, and I see it, and it's like this marathon, right? There's the end of that marathon. Here you are, and you're like, go, buddy, go. And you're reading. And then you stop right here at like 24 miles, and that's it. And you're like, I'm done. And you're like, no. They've explained that there's a life lesson. They've explained that there's a reason that the author was doing something. They've explained that it happened in the book, that the author had a purpose, but then they don't explain how it applies to us, right? They need to get through all of those steps in order to be successful in their body paragraph and in their essay as a whole. So I draw this for them like, oh man, you're so close. That last step of a body paragraph, we don't do that well. I need you to remember to do that. So another one of those visuals that's super useful. Just like in the beginning of the presentation, I told you that a lot of times I will teach skills without literature. And then once they have those skills, then I can apply it, right? So when I teach, first of all, the difference between evidence and analysis, and our first exercises in writing analysis, it's using paintings. Just as much as we would look at a piece of literature and we would pick out little symbols or little things that a character says or does, I practice that skill by looking at art with the students. These are the two I typically use. This one is New Kids in the Neighborhood on the left. And then over here, I'll tell you what that is in a second. So I'll have the students, we make a chart, and there's a link there for you. We make a chart, and it has claim, evidence, and analysis. And I leave the analysis part blank because that's where we're going to practice the writing portion. And I go, I just want you to pick out things you see. Just things you see, not what they mean, not just things you see. And they're like, okay, I see a lot of baseball stuff. I'm like, great, baseball stuff. I see a cat and a dog. Okay, good, animals. I see something on that chair. I'm like, yeah, what is that? And they're like, it's a painting. I'm like, does that look like a painting to you? You know, and so we start doing that. I see a car back there. I see, is that a moving van? Are they moving in, moving out? At some point, they notice the sidewalk cracks and the shadow in between them. They notice the student, sorry, such a teacher, right? They notice the kid's posture, the leaning back, the leaning forward, the kind of head tilt to the side. When they start making claims like the time period, I start putting that in claims. Eventually, they choose one of the pieces of evidence, the sidewalk crack, the baseball items, the children's posture, and they analyze why Rockwell painted it that way, why he painted that detail. That's their first time writing analysis in my class. If I have repeat students, I'll do this one over here with them. Otherwise, if I don't have repeat students, I'll end up doing both paintings for the same classes. So over here, the students will pick out the clothing, the papers that are rolled up or in the pocket, the state of the gentleman's clothes, the fact that always there's one kid that picks out that he has a blue collar and everyone else has white collars. And then someone will at some point realize that there is a woman here and that her mouth is covered. I find that really interesting, right? So we start talking about it. And after a while, they get really tired of they're like, that's all we see. And I'm like, I hear you. So I'm gonna tell them, look down or close your eyes. And this is gonna sound really weird, but I want you to yell out the thing that you see the most when you look at the painting again. And so I'm like, 1, 2, 3. And they all yell out ears. And I'm like, yeah, those are some big ears, And Rockwell's a really good painter. So what's with all these ears? The title of the piece is Freedom of Speech. There are a lot of big ears in a painting titled Freedom of Speech, and no one is actually speaking. So we start talking about that. Great to analyze as well. So they end up writing either about the woman, the one woman who has a mouth covered. They write about the blue collar or white collar, and they write about ears, which is also just really fun to write a paragraph about ears. Cool one though. When you start showing examples of analysis, I highly recommend you don't show the A examples. Again, if you're going to talk about grade level, it's not an A necessarily, right? So for me, grade level is a B, and I am still trying to instill that confidence in the student. So if they can see that their writing is getting close to the B, or is at the B level, or better yet, is better than the B, that's useful to me. If I show the A, I have a lot of students who are not close to that and might shut down. I have a lot of students who might be at grade level and still not feel really confident or encouraged about their writing. Showing the A isn't all that useful to me. It is if I've got a student who's like, I'm stuck at like a B plus and I don't know what to do. I'll show that kid the A. You know, what do you think about this person's writing? So anytime that I'm showing a sample, I like to show multiple samples so the discussion happens about, I really like how the student did this. And then the student can say, yeah, but I don't really like the part where they said that. And I'm like, why not? And now we're talking about writing as a craft instead of something that's totally unattainable. Okay, so just throwing it in there. When I start asking students to write about whatever it is that they want to write about, most of them have said, I've never had to do that before. So we do a couple what we call whip arounds. I have each student come up with 10 thematic ideas and 10 elements or devices that the author uses in the book. In this case, again, the book thief, okay? This is one class worth of thematic ideas that came up that day. If everyone comes up with 10 and I snake around and go like, tell me one, tell me one, tell me one, tell me one, I get through all 40 because we had big classes. And I go, great. And they're like, good. I'm like, great, we're going backwards. And you can see them like, oh, you know. And so then we go through it and we get all of these great thematic ideas. They can then start thinking about, I think I wanted to write about family, but I actually think I'm going to write about secrecy now that I've seen that word. Or they'll start pairing them and how the need to stand up for what's, you know, about whatever's going on in the world can be really difficult when you're parenting and considering your child. In this case, it's Nazi Germany, so extra difficult. Anyway, so we do that. So they can either focus on thematic idea first and then figure out how the author is creating that thematic idea, or go the other way. Because a bunch of students are like, I love how much foreshadowing he does, or I love the asides that he does in there, or the settings are really funky. Like we spend a lot of time in the basement and there's so many mentions of soup, you know? And so we go through all the different elements as well and do a whip around. So sometimes they start with a thematic idea and then how did he create that? Or they say, I'm really interested in the writing and then why was he writing it that way? But we always end up with the same kind of perfect thesis. One of the things that my students struggled to understand, and I struggled to communicate as a teacher, was what you're writing about is not about the book, and it's not about the character. You're writing about the author's writing. And I say his because it's Zusak. So you're writing your essay, not on the book thief, not on Liesel or Max, but on Zusak's writing and what he's trying to communicate to his audience. And they're like, oh, yeah. When we start saying that they're writing about a book, or we start writing about this character, that's when we get a ton of that plot summary, and then we write on their thing, plot summary. Well, of course it's plot summary, right? So if we talk about, no, you're not writing about the book, you're writing about the writing, that's when things get really analytical. All right, this next activity, again, is ungraded. It is digital, which means, again, you can use it whether you're in class or in a distance learning experience. So I'll provide the students with, okay, you've got all these devices, you've got all these elements. I need your group to pick one, right? And so every group is assigned a slide. I own the slide deck, and then it's got group 1, 2, 3, 4, and they put either the device that they want to analyze together or the element that they want to analyze together. And it'll end up looking like this. So I'll explain it in just a second. I have screens all over my classroom, so I can see these from far away. This is my slide deck. I have 2 different sides to it. This side is typically blank, and this side grows. Okay. I say, okay, group 4, you are going to write a paragraph about Zusak's use of rhetorical questions. Like, okay, great. Here's what I need you to do. I need you to write a claim, topic sentence, about his use of rhetorical question. I want you on your own computer. You have a blank document that's yours for kind of rough drafts, and you have this slide. Once you type that first topic sentence, I want you to copy it and paste it onto this slide so all group members can see it. So you've got about 2-3 minutes. Go ahead and write a topic sentence. When you're done, paste it onto the group slide. So they do that. They paste it here. These become the suggested sentences from every group member. The group looks at it, talks about it, either takes one because it's awesome, or they merge some pieces from different ones, or they rewrite it together. When they agree on it, it goes over here. The discussions are invaluable. And again, no grading, instant feedback, lots of learning, no negative effect on grades. So the pressure is down on the students, right? Again, now this is our topic sentence. Everybody go back to your document, pretend that's your topic sentence. What should the next sentence be? Copy that, offer it to your group here, discuss it, get that next sentence here, do it again, do it again, do it again. Super tedious. And sometimes the product isn't as beautiful as you would like it to be, but it's about the conversation. It's about the understanding of the pieces of the paragraph. It's about how effective your writing can be, how clear it can be. And they say that this activity, again, not graded, no points, was the most effective writing exercise that our class did, right? So that we needed to keep. Anyway, that's a neat activity. Can be done in class or remotely. I like my students to color code their body paragraphs, and it's useful for me when I'm trying to take a look at it really quickly, and it's useful to the student as well, so we can have a conversation. So in my class, the kind of the question when it comes to evidence that they need to discuss is kind of a gold color. And so they make that part gold. And then the different parts of the analysis that they need to hit, right, in order to get through that marathon are pink, blue, and green. I'm not showing you to this because it's the most beautiful paragraph I've ever seen. It's because of the color coding. And so I can say things like, you've got actually a really nice ratio between the evidence portion and then the analysis. That's great. I can see that you did a topic sentence and a concluding sentence that's in red. That's good. And I asked the student, I'm like, why are these black? And she goes, oh, those are my body paragraph topics. And so I turned it black and bold so I could remember that I'm only talking about that instead of all the ideas I have. I was like, oh, I love that. And so I promised that I would share that. So I share it every presentation. Okay. I offer some tips for how to do a conclusion really well as well. And that's a great thing for students, especially once they've mastered introduction and body paragraphs. We get to those conclusions and they're like, thrown together. You're like, no, that was the last thing I was reading. I really want to know, what you really think about this whole thing. So I give them some tips on how to do that, and that's linked for you as well. That's my writing instruction. But it's also really important that we learn to assess more effectively, okay? When I told you, hey, we'd practiced all these skills and they wrote all these pieces and I didn't grade it. I didn't take it home and grade it. Instead, I looked at it as a collection of skills and I asked for multiple samples of those skills. So this is what I gave them. It was a 6-slide deck, and everyone had a copy. And they put in here, these are the steps that I need to take when I'm planning an essay. Here are some examples, and this is why it's important. Same thing for embedded quotes. Here are the different types of embedding quotes. Here is how you do that, and here are some samples to show that I've got it covered. So not only are they showing me that they have the skills, but they're also showing me that they understand the component and why that component is important to the rest of the piece. So I like that one a lot. And it made it really fast to be able to assess. Ends up looking like that. But they could pull from any of the pieces that we wrote, or really any pieces that they wrote for other classes as well. When I was, until probably 2 years ago, so for the first 12 years or so, I would teach in the beginning of the school year as a means of review, I would teach embedding quotes. And I was like, I bet my students actually know how to do this. So I would provide a quote on the board and I would say, hey, fill out this Google form, make it a drop-in, a dialogue tag, an embedded quote, like collegiately embedded, and then let me know if you need any help. And they filled it out. I used to spend 2 days reviewing embedding quotes, and I would collect it and I would grade it and the whole thing. And when I did it this way, it turns out I only had about 8 students per class that really needed my help. I saved myself 2 days. I saved them 2 days, and I saved myself grading time. Okay. But the ultimate time for English teachers, I did the math. I don't recommend doing the math, although I'm showing it to you. If you have 200 students and you spend 10 minutes per essay, that's almost a full work week of grading on top of teaching every time you assign a full process essay. I used to hire babysitters. I used to give up my weekends. I used to give up my nights. It would take a month. It was not effective. They would end up in the trash can. Like, this is not a good system. Instead, I started doing in-person immediate feedback or feed forward. They would do a portion, I would look at it. They would do a portion, I would look at it. And so I started using writing stations. If you've heard of Catlin Tucker, I've taken her tools. I've taken tools from another colleague. I've taken tools from Jennifer Gonzalez. I've merged them all together and I made them work for me, okay? These are the student benefits. These are the teacher benefits. Super useful. I do an entire presentation on this, so I can't teach all of it, but I just want to share some things with you, okay? A few years ago, on average, this is how much time I was spending grading outside of planning and teaching and communicating with students and parents. I made this system 4 hours. My goal was 0 hours. I hit that this year, and then, we all went home, and I definitely was grading at home. But that's life-changing. When you talk about teacher burnout, especially for English teachers, this is life-changing. It's better for students, and it's better for teachers. That's the kind of stuff we want to use. So I would do stations. I would take a look just at the introduction. And if they had their body paragraph done, I'd take a look at that. The next time, I would look at their body paragraph. If they had their second one done, I'd look at that. The last day, I would look at their conclusion. They would turn it in. I would spend 2 days, right? Half the class one day, half the class the other day. And I would have some kind of tentative scores that are happening each day. So I'm just providing feedback. And by the end, I'm just looking to see that they've improved. 0 hours at home. The other thing it allowed me to do is that as I was working with students, it allowed me to provide those tutorials to the students who needed a little bit more help. So like if I said, hey, Joe, you have a lot of run-ons. My goal is to create these little tutorials, 2-3 minutes for each thing that would lead them to be able to identify their writing error and how to fix it. right? So even for all of these, well, not that and is, but the other ones, run-ons, passive voice, fragments, a lack of sentence variety, there are only a few grammatical things that they really need to learn. So I would do a 2-minute video on prepositions, 2 minutes on subjects, 2 minutes on verbs, right? And then as soon as I figured out, like, hey, here's the different structures of a sentence, there would be one more that would either go to run-ons, fragments, or sentence variety. In all my spare time, but still, that's a goal. When I started doing the writing conferences, I'm on a block schedule, and a colleague at another high school was meeting with students every day. So it had to be much shorter than what I was doing. We had to find a much more efficient way. And again, that's what I mean. Take some of these ideas, make it what you need it to be so it's good for your students and good for you. Okay. I hope you find them useful. I hope they can just be like plug and play and you're good to go. But if not, make those changes. Okay. Try those things. This is a 2-minute tutorial. I do think it's useful. And if you're not on a block schedule, it might be exceptionally useful, but it's a way of getting students to collaborate and discuss their writing as well. Okay. All right. This is the thing that makes the all grading at school possible. Okay. It's called ProKeys. This is, I think, the first blog I ever wrote, and there's a link there for you. ProKeys is everything. You know how you do Control C and it does a copy? Or you do Control V and it copies? Or you do Control F to find? Those are called hotkeys. Am I right about that? Key commands. And you can create your own. So my teacher, Mrs. Porter, right, 10th grade, C/S, if she would have typed in C/S and she had this tool, it would populate with the information that I needed to be able to know what she was talking about and maybe even take me to a video to show me how to fix it. Once I figured out I could use that, I created 3 pages organized by my writing stations so that I could give feedback to the students in a positive tone that was effective, that was useful, and took so little time that it allowed me time to give verbal personalized feedback to the student, especially compliments, right? So let's say the student is struggling with their thesis statement, like they just weren't even in class. I don't know what's going on with your thesis statement. I would talk to the student, they'd be sitting next to me. I wouldn't say that. I'd say, okay, so we need to work on your thesis statements, all right? That's really important. That's gonna drive your whole essay. And in the comment, I would type in TH3, thesis 3. Green is 1. 2 is you're working on it. You still have a little bit of a revision to go. 3 is where have you been? Something has gone very wrong, right? I have them for everything. It makes it possible to save that much time, get the information to the student in a non-threatening way, in a useful way, at the right time, and still allow me to give that personalized verbal feedback. All right, you can also use it for everything else. So I know there's probably some of you going, well, I have that in Google Classroom. I hear what you're saying. ProKeys will work even if you stop using Google. It'll work in Illuminate. It'll work for other things. So I use it for my emails. I don't type the end of my emails anymore. I just type END and that populates. Okay. You can make form emails like missing work, MW, and then you just fill it out. I actually use this one. You should not use this one because I'll get all your students' examples, but I would highlight a portion of my student's essay and I would type in EX. This would populate and it's hyperlinked. It goes to a form and says, I really would like to have this as a sample for my future students. Can I have it? And now I've got a spreadsheet of all the student work. Look at all these introductions. Look at all these conclusions. Look at these embedded quotes. So you can provide links to their materials or to tutorials or whatever, but that's a really useful tool. When I'm doing those writing stations, in fact, all my grading is based on a single point rubric. Some of you have probably heard of a single point rubric. If you haven't, it's absolutely worth reading the blog post that Jennifer Gonzalez, Cult of Pedagogy, provided. I grade everything this way now. I used to also include it with points. I no longer include it with points, okay? My grade book might look a little scary. I don't mean for it to, and you're welcome to it, but it's so much more simplistic, okay? Every grading period, I choose 5 skills. All right? Just 5. We focus on those skills. We hammer those skills. And then at the end of whatever time period, at the end of the grading period, I would click this little arrow and I would click meets grade level or exceeds expectation. There's another one that's approaching or needs help. It ends up looking like this. I'm a color person, I'm a visual person, I need to see it. So if I look up here at Samantha, she's got 2 grade levels. To me, that's a B. And she's got 3 A's, A minus. No due dates, not the late work problem, not the taking off of points, not any of that. I get to look at, I get to assess a collection of their skills and then assess those particular skills and then end up with a grade. It works for me, it works for them. Again, that's a much larger conversation, but it's really so student friendly and so teacher friendly too. Anyway, no matter what you do, even you're in all these different sessions, right? If you see something, try it. If you see something that needs to be adapted a little bit, try it. Reflect, and then apply that reflection. Try it again and try it again and try it again. And try until it's good for students and try until it's good for you too. All right? Thank you so much for having me. I know we have a Q&A coming up. I'm thrilled to be here and answer your questions. I hope you found some of it useful, and I'm excited to talk with you today. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Marissa. I would say we probably have, a few minutes left. If anybody wants to pop any questions.
And I see Maria there. Thank you, Maria. I know, and I know that that was longer than what we anticipated. I just really wanted everything to be very clear, and then I knew that I could provide you with all the links. And then at the end, beginning and end of the presentation, it also has all of my contact information. And I love having these discussions about how do we make this better, not just for our students. Our focus is the students, but we need good teachers, and we need good teachers to not be burned out. We need good teachers with a real work-life balance. So keep making things better for students. Absolutely, that's what we're here for. But let's keep teachers teaching, right? And keep teachers happy. Happy teachers are good teachers. And I think that that's super important. So I think it's Christina. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm glad that it was clear. That's always my biggest concern. If you need anything, people have tried TQE. I'm the TQE person. So I'm thrilled to hear that too. Can I answer any other questions for you? You're welcome to pop them up here. If you haven't done TQE, I highly recommend it. Great for distance learning, great for in-person learning, and it's all the reading skills that you want without any of, if you'll excuse me, without any of the crap that makes kids hate reading. You are absolutely welcome. Link to the recorded session. I don't know the answer to that.
Yes, the recorded session will be sent out and the link will be on our website.
Great. And then Vanjie, I think you're asking for the grading template. Absolutely. Please get in touch. I think it's on my Teachers Pay Teachers. You do not need to pay for it. I don't need it's fine. You're here in this conference. If you get in touch with me, I'd be happy to share that with you. You're welcome. Anybody else?
I think this was great, Marissa.
I'm so glad.
I would say, I think you did such a nice job of moderating the chat and answering questions along the way and giving the resources. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time. And I really enjoyed this style of the video and then kind of having you be able to answer questions live. I'm seeing lots of thank yous from everybody. So I'm thinking if people do have other questions, you were generous in saying they could reach out to you. So I think we can handle it that way. And I
Okay,
just
great.
wanted to remind everybody who's still here, if they could fill out the feedback form when they get that today, along with the recording and the link to Marissa's slides, then we'll see you another day for another webinar probably.
I
So
hope
Marissa,
so.
thank you so much. This was awesome. I learned a ton. Great ideas.
Great. I love it. Thanks, everybody. Have a really good day.
Okay, take care, everyone.
Bye.